Good evening, family and friends. I was bestowed with the most privileged task of giving my grandmother's eulogy today. While Grandma was of sound mind, she told me that she wanted me to deliver the eulogy at her funeral. Well, based on that questionable decision, in retrospect, I'm actually not sure if she was really of sound mind when she asked me that, because everyone in my family knows that I am the last person that you give the microphone to. But as grandmothers always know best, she knew I needed to have the last word when it came to any argument. So even in death, she is giving me the opportunity to have the final say on her 82 years of pure greatness. So thank you for this last gift, Grandma. Grandma called me precious angel for obvious reasons. Those of you who know me know that I am timid, shy, sweet, and innocent, right? Not even close. Even though that name she coined for me was never quite fitting of my personality traits, Grandma always saw the good in everyone. And most importantly, her grandchildren were perfect beings in her eyes. Grandma was a kind and selfless individual, but she had an undeniable edge about her. She was wickedly witty and feisty. When we brought her to family parties, there were two types of people we would notice. The first of whom were the ones who would hide out, so they didn't have to be confronted by Auntie Mona. And the second of whom were those who loved being around her and embraced her sarcastic remarks and her calling them out. She told it like it was, and you would have to proceed at your own risk if you crossed her path at gatherings. So with that being said, I would like to thank you all for coming today, even though Auntie Mona has probably read each of you off at a family party at some point in her lifetime. I'll never forget when we went to Molokai together for the anniversary celebration of Kalua'aha Church. While there, Grandma sees one of her oldest friends from small kid time, Moana Dudwa, who is best known for heading Moana's hula halau. Now, if any of you know of the late Moana, may she rest in peace, she was a beautiful Hawaiian maiden. You know, Grandma actually was not interested in being politically correct. So she yells out to get Moana's attention and says, "Hey, Uncle Butchie." Everyone in my family turned bright red, and we were all whispering, "Grandma, ay, what you doing?" Moana turned bright red as well. She comes up to Grandma and says, "Mona, I'm Moana now." But knowing my grandma well, Moana was so gracious and laughed it off. We asked Grandma why she called her Uncle Butchie, and she said, "That's what we called her back in the day, and I know her as Butchie." There wasn't a qualm about it in her mind. That's how Grandma was. She called it like it was, and Uncle Butchie was not Moana. She was Uncle Butchie. Now, Grandma had two philosophies when it came to eulogies, which she expressed to us. The first of which was, if you had nothing good to say about someone when they were alive, then don't talk about them after they die. And second, she said, I don't trust anyone writing my eulogy, so I will just write my own. In actuality, Grandma was serious about writing her own eulogy. After she passed away, I found journals which contained narratives of her life, which when pieced together would comprise a sort of eulogy. Grandma was an eloquent writer and kept many journals of her thoughts. Grandma was also a control freak. I will read to you in her own words in the following, which was a segment of what I found in her works. To my family, I always had it in mind to write a story about myself, my life, what I had experienced many years back, where it started and where it will end. I have so much to say about myself and my life. You will find it very interesting when you find the time and chance to read what I have written in the book. Let's go back to where it all started. My story starts here on the island of Oahu. God was the creator of my life, and I waited for my turn, my time, the day I'll soon be facing the outside world. There are persons and people who were dear and close to us, who were involved in my life, that were there with a helping hand, supported and comforted us during our trying times. The day had finally come. I came into the world on June 9, 1935, at 8:30 a.m. in the morning. weighed at 8 pounds, 12 ounces in the hands of a midwife named Mary Cabral. My mom was suffering so much with pains and had a hard time pushing me out because I turned. They both worked very hard to bring me out. I came out okay, thank God. My parents were blessed with a bundle of joy. She was very humble. A baby girl came into this world. I was named Mona Ha'aha'a Ka'apana. My parents held me in their arms overnight. On June 10, 1935, my grandmother, Elizabeth Ha'aha'alukela Iaya, arrived from Molokai with a baby blanket, diaper bag, and bottle, waiting at the front door of the home of Mary Cabral, the midwife who handed me to my grandmother. My mother and father were not there at the home upon their arrival. My grandmother smiled and held me with dignity, took me into her arms, and we left the home in a taxi that was waiting for her and I. She took us down to the pier to the waiting big ship called the Hualalai that sailed across the ocean to each island. We were met by my grandfather, the Reverend Isaac Daniel Kuihealani Iaya, with his Model T car from Kaunakakai. We headed all the way to the east end part of Molokai. Now again, that was in her own words. Grandma was hanai by her grandparents and lived until adulthood on Molokai. She would later move back to Honolulu and marry my grandfather, Edwin Albert Maderas. She was a nanny for a doctor's family and spent most of her life as a homemaker. After 4 miscarriages, she had a miracle baby, my mom, Julia Hale Maderas, who then married my dad, Patrick Souza. My parents had 5 children, my older brother Keone, myself, my brother Brandon, my sister Brittany, and Landon. Stemming from my siblings, my grandma had 5 great-grandchildren, Maddox, Bentley, Royce, Adia, and Addison. Grandma and Papa owned their home in Liliha on Panui Street. After my Papa died in 1997, she came to live with my family in Kapolei just to get through the tough time of losing her husband. What was supposed to only be a temporary living situation turned into months, and Grandma insisted that she needed to return home to Liliha. In all honesty, I think she was terribly sick of us. But nonetheless, my mom said, "Mom, you're not going home. You're going to live with us." She agreed, as she was getting used to the chaos that is the Souza family. We loved having her with us, and it was fun knowing that Grandma was always around. In order to have a sense of purpose in our household, she took over the laundry. She would wash our clothes and meticulously hang and fold every piece of school uniforms, my dad's aloha shirts for work, and everything in between. Everyone used to tell me, "Hey, you should be washing your own clothes. How come you make your grandma do your laundry for you?" My response was always, "She won't let me touch the washer or dryer." Sometimes I would say, "Grandma, I need these jeans. I'm just gonna throw it in the wash." She would say, "No, you leave it in the laundry basket and I will do it myself." I think her biggest fear was that we would destroy her washer and dryer because we didn't know what we were doing. Unfortunately, when Grandma started to decline and could no longer do the laundry, our clothes came out of the dryer, wrinkled and disheveled, because we couldn't quite do things as she did. We missed that the most about her. Most of my favorite memories of Grandma were from when my grandfather was alive. Keone, Brandon, and I used to stay with them at their house on Panui Street because my parents were always at my dad's work functions. We would order pepperoni pizza from Pizza Hut and watch Nickelodeon with Grandma and Papa. Keone and I would use Grandma's 4-prong cane that she walked with as a microphone and sing Stevie Wonder's "I Just Called to Say I Love You." We would stand by the cane and use the handle as a microphone. This is actually how Keone's singing career took off. Sadly, my singing career did not take off in the same way as Keone's because I was given devastating news that I was tone deaf. As Grandma put us to bed, she would tell us stories about the menehune and night marchers on Molokai, always explaining that you had to be tough-skinned to live on Molokai because they did not have the amenities that we enjoyed on Oahu, especially while growing up in her day. She knew I was a city girl, so basically she thought I would die if I had to live on Molokai, and always made light of that. Those were cherished times. Grandma and Papa would always travel to Hilo to spend time with my Papa's family, and my favorite adventures in my childhood came from traveling with them to Hawaii Island. On one particular trip, we went to the Hilton Waikoloa. While there at the Waikoloa, there was this long bridge that everyone had to cross, and there was this one young boy who was jumping and jumping on the bridge, which made the bridge very unstable, especially for someone walking with a cane. My grandma was pissed. She looked at us and said, "He's gonna keep doing that, I hope he falls." And lo and behold, by the powers that only our kupuna seem to have, the boy falls right on his okole. Grandma grinned. She thought it was so funny and said, "Good for him." Don't ever cross grounds. Not many people know this outside of my family, but I didn't call my grandma. I called her Moner. M-O-N-E-R. And sometimes to get fancy, I would call her Monel, more French sounding. Let's just say I had variations of the name. Grandma was always on it, and she would nag a lot to me about getting things done, which I found endearing. She was on my case one day and moaning about something, and I said, "Stop being a moaner, Mona." This caught on, and the rest is history. Till the day she died in hospice, she was my moaner. And soon enough, my siblings would call her Moner. And most recently, in her last days in hospice, I heard little Royce calling her Moner. What a legacy I started. Then Royce thought it was funny and started calling everyone Moner. And I had to correct him and say, "Hey, that's Tutu's name." Moner was the most selfless human being I've ever known. She was a person who would sneak me envelopes when I was a poor law student every time I would leave the house with little notes saying, "Kanani, use this to buy yourself lunch. Love, Grandma." She was all things entertaining, but yet she was the most genuinely authentic woman, and most importantly, full Hawaiian woman I knew. See, the thing about my grandma was that it was never about her. She always made sure her daughter, her son-in-law, and her grandchildren were okay. I cannot recall in my 32 years a time where my grandma was selfish or had bad intentions or ever put her needs before the needs of others, even when others around her did not treat her the best. That's what made her the best. She was a damn good grandmother and an even more glowing example of what a Hawaiian woman should be. She was never in the limelight for anything, but she lived by an example as her ancestors were to her, and that example will live on in us forever. She was the ultimate personification of her name, Ha'aha'a. She was humble. Let me leave you with these last words written by my grandma from February 9th, 2014 in a journal that I bought for her. "Dear God, I will cherish this book forever and ever as long as you permit for a long life on this earth. I will write whatever comes to mind. I know the angels will help me and they will guard me until it's time for me to be with them in a place where I will find peace, heaven. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth." Now you are in that place, Grandma, where you have found peace in heaven. You were allergic to alcohol here on earth, which I always found puzzling. But in heaven, I hope you are tanking some tequila shots and having a blast with Papa and your loved ones. We love you, and living without you will not be easy. Thank you.